The first point that we are going to start in on is really the impact of human trafficking on communities and smaller communities. And a way that we're going to connect this a little bit more to our home base here in Boise is that the Northwest, including Idaho, is greatly impacted by human trafficking. Our main point is that every community is. And to prove this point, I'm going to go and look at the human trafficking ring in Oregon, as it is so close to us. And what we're looking at is that in the Portland metro area, with a population of 2.3 million people, we're seeing these escort ads for young women. These women are often described as young but legal, but very often turn out to actually be minors. We were seeing 377 total listings in a week. Seattle has similar numbers with a population of 3.5 million, and they saw 523 in a week. And these ads are actually really good ways for police to gauge exactly how big the ring is in a particular area. And as you know, Seattle and Portland are fairly close to us. They're within a few hours. And of course, it's a lot easier for a community to accept that human trafficking happens in a larger area, because when you're moving to a big city, one of the first things that people think about is crime, right? Well, it's easier to see the numbers of crime be as larger because there's more people in an area. So, for instance, with Boise, who, yes, has a large population in Idaho, but as compared to a bigger city like Seattle, we have a lot less people. So, of course, the crimes committed are going to look like there's less. So, really, every community needs to accept that human trafficking happens. And the problem that we're seeing here in Oregon is that there's lots happening in Portland around human trafficking, and it's really handled by gangs rather than individual pimps, which oftentimes makes it more difficult to track. And they're cooperating to help each other evade police as prostituting minors becomes a larger and safer staple of their income. And I'm getting all of these statistics and these stories from Investigate West, which is an organization dedicated specifically to the Northwest human trafficking issues. And so what we're seeing is that there are things being done in these communities, and a lot of that is that there's a bigger problem, again, because of the bigger population, but also there's a greater financial investment in stopping human trafficking. There's more people on the job because gangs are a lot more popular in bigger cities. While it is hard to pinpoint human trafficking, a lot of these gangs also involve other illegal activities such as drug dealing, which is a lot easier to pinpoint than human trafficking. Alright, and so Oregon also has pretty aggressive tracking laws, which is a really great step. And this is showing a community that is accepting that they have a problem and working to fix it. So they're requiring businesses to have a proof of age in an adult entertainment industry. Computer technicians have to report child pornography. And also, this is really great, criminal records for minors convicted of prostitution are expunged, which actually is fairly rare considering, especially minors in the prostitution ring are generally, they face more convictions than the actual pimps. Alright, and also soliciting sex from a minor is a crime, knowingly or not. So Seattle and Portland are very actively working to stop this problem. But as you can see, it is a huge problem in both of these communities. So I mean, Boise really needs to, on our home base, needs to accept that this is a problem too. And to further illustrate that this is a problem, even in Idaho, we're going to go ahead and look at a survivor's story from Idaho human sex trafficking. This content is pretty heavy, so just a warning. What happens here with a lot of other youth who end up in trafficking is that they're coerced or conditioned. That's generally how it goes. Most human trafficking actually isn't someone being kidnapped and forced into it. And so a victim of human sex trafficking named Amanda didn't actually know that she was a victim of human sex trafficking for a long time. She didn't realize that she was being manipulated, which most victims don't for a long time, and by the time that maybe they do, it might be too late. And she was being exploited by an individual who was a trafficker who was trying to make money both in Idaho and out of state. Amanda was from the Treasure Valley. She grew up there. When she entered adulthood, she found that she needed money to pay for bills, so she started working at a strip club. She had a lot of hardships, substance abuse, depression, losing one of her friends. Most victims of human sex trafficking actually end up addicted to some sort of substance. So she traveled to North Dakota, and she got in contact with some sex traffickers, little did she know. And she soon realized that she was being coerced and trafficked. And she eventually was brought back to Idaho, where she went through the Inside Out Salon, which is a nonprofit that is established in bringing awareness and advocacy in an action to fight against human trafficking. And so what we're seeing is, even though she technically was trafficked, both in Idaho and out of state, mainly North Dakota, we're still seeing human trafficking here. I mean, this was just a normal girl from the Treasure Valley that was actually trafficked, and was trafficked here in Idaho as well. And really, it can happen to anyone in any community, and it happens in ours constantly. And I think that we actually have less resources and policies dedicated to this because our community is not accepting that it happens here. It's also not reported on very much. It was actually slightly difficult to find articles based around human trafficking here in Boise. So I did find one on KIVI from 2018, so it's fairly recent. Her story, I believe, is not actually that recent, but she is speaking out about it now. So now that we've looked at the Northwest and how it impacts communities a little bit closer to us, we can look into international human trafficking. So with international human trafficking, I'm first going to start in on some statistics to just kind of give the scope of the problem. So some statistics that are from the stopthetraffic.org. So it's an organization that is saying that people shouldn't be bought or sold and actively works towards that to provide information as well as encourage policies and efforts to stop that. So an estimated 40.3 million victims are trapped in modern-day slavery. 24 million of them were exploited for labor. 15.4 million were forced into marriage. And there are 5.4 victims of modern slavery for every 1,000 people in the world. And human trafficking and modern slavery don't discriminate. They affect men, women, children. Particularly, yes, women are the most impacted. 71% of trafficking victims are actually women. And also 75% are aged 18 or older. and the number of children under the age of 18 are estimated at 10.1 million. So while that is the smaller number, the minor number is the 25%, or the 10.1 million. It's still 10.1 million minors are actually in the trafficking sector. So those are huge numbers. We're talking millions. We're talking 30.2 million aged 18 or older. And these are really just the numbers that are even being reported by police, by authorities, any data that's come to this organization. And so the numbers are actually probably substantially more. Now we're going to look into industry a little bit more to get kind of the scope of the problem of what's going on internationally. So 16 million, or 64%, are forced labor victims, and they're working in domestic work, and particularly construction or agriculture. 4.8 million, or 19%, is forced sexual exploitation. 4 million, or 16%, is forced labor imposed by state authorities. So actually, it is happening on sort of a legal basis as well. And so in these industries, particularly the cost of labor that we're seeing, companies or businesses don't want to pay these, and so they're outsourcing to traffickers who are trading people internationally. A lot of times this comes under the ruse of an individual with a family who is escaping an area of poverty and is promised a job for them or their family. And when they actually get to this place, the traffickers quickly turn it around on them and actually force them into slavery. Or coerce them and say that, oh, they'll get a payout at the end, but that obviously never happens. So really understanding the human trafficking issue as a global picture, and also as something that impacts us as a community and in the Northwest, is really key to seeing that this is an issue. This is a huge problem. It affects everyone. There are millions and millions of people that are unaccounted for and being forced into slavery. And so now that we have this basis of what's the problem, where is it happening, and how it impacts us specifically, we're actually going to transition into why human trafficking exists to kind of get a little bit deeper into the issue.